Hey everybody, welcome back to Avalon, episode 17. Today we have a lot to talk about regarding just Avalon as a project in general, but before we dive into any of that stuff, I want to talk a little bit about what the episode will be about today, so you know what's going on while we're kind of discussing the project itself. We want to go ahead and kind of jump back to the same area we worked on last episode. This is that avenue that is connecting to our second cargo freight terminal. So this is like right across the street. We're gonna have some residential kind of stuff going on here. I wanted to have a nice residential complex that has some little walkways in the middle. It's very reminiscent of like a hotel resort in a way. I kind of designed it like that so that there would be this kind of nice, little pedestrian walkways going in between all the buildings, and it just kind of creates this little community. So you're not just kind of being dumped out on the street whenever you walk out of your apartment. Instead, you get to come out and kind of be a part of this larger kind of pedestrian area that has, all kinds of like food trucks and restaurants and fun things to do. So I think that this is a cool thing to do in this city in particular because the blocks are just so gigantic that there's all this space in the middle, and I wanted to utilize that in a way where we could not only have lots of outward facing windows, because that's one of the things we've been kind of struggling with. I know I got a lot of comments on the last few episodes, particularly the second to last episode and before that, kind of just commenting on the fact that a lot of my residential design was kind of creating lots of interior rooms. So I wanted to see if we could still have the same sort of concept in the design without having so many buildings that are kind of creating interior and no window rooms. So this is sort of like a middle ground for that. I still have the same design, but now we have a whole bunch of buildings that have windows and rooms that have windows rather than a big stack of buildings that kind of creates lots of interior space. So I imagine that the insides of those other buildings that we built would still have, larger rooms that are utilized for other things, maybe, office space, or who knows, maybe they're like insanely gigantic apartment complexes that are super expensive to live in. I don't know. But regardless, obviously, I wanted to address that a little bit, and I definitely took into account that in particular when I designed this area. So anyway, we'll do that today. And this will be just kind of wrapping up this block here, but on to sort of the other stuff that I wanted to talk about regarding Avalon as a whole. So the first thing, you probably don't notice it right now because this is still shot in 1080p, but the video itself should be uploaded in 1440 at 60 FPS, which is something that I don't usually do. I may even consider uploading in full 4K, even though I only record at 1440. The main reason why I even decided to switch to 1440 is, well, for one thing, I actually built a new computer. So, and when I say I built a new computer, I didn't necessarily like buy a whole bunch of new components. I still have the same basic components that I already had. There's not really a lot to be gained by upgrading at this point. A lot of the lag that I get in this game is kind of software related and not necessarily hardware related. So I'm not too worried about that. But the main thing was my workflow has been honestly just awful. I haven't really talked about it that much in the videos. I try to kind of keep them away from like the meta stuff, but my workflow has been terrible for far too long. I've been using like a dual PC setup, which is great for streaming, but it's awful for recording. So when I built it, I was like, oh man, I'll start streaming more and it'll be awesome, and it'll be great for recording as well. And I had this whole vision in my head of like, oh man, I could record with my second PC, and then I'll just have the footage go over like a NAS, and then I can edit it on my render PC, and like it'll be perfect. And then in reality, it was just like a whole lot of transferring footage all the time, and my render PC wasn't as powerful as my main PC, so editing was not even that fun because I had to deal with like lag, and I didn't even have SSDs to edit off of. So there was all kinds of like complications, and yet I still had like two systems with lots of expensive components in them. So I went back, I got rid of my second PC. I now only have my main PC. I'm editing this on the same computer that I play City Skylines on now. And let me tell you, right now while I'm editing this, I'm like speaking to you while looking at Premiere Pro, and it is like infinitely better. So that alone is awesome. I got some SSDs to hold all the footage on, so editing should be great as well. But the big thing is I'm no longer capturing with like an Elgato HD60 Pro, which is it like caps at 1080 60, and it did like all this compression on the footage, so it just made it look kind of awful. Maybe I'm getting too into like the video jargon, but basically I'm capturing at a much higher bitrate now, and I want to flex that by posting at 1440 or maybe even 4K if there's enough demand in the comments for that. I think that having that higher bitrate will make my videos look a lot better. So hopefully you notice a little bit of a difference in the second half of this video. I think the last maybe 3 minutes or so should be shot in 1440, but also all the cinematics should be as well. So let me know what you think about that. Maybe even like take a look at the last video and then come to this one and let me know if you appreciate like the 1440 and maybe even want to see 4K instead. Like I said, it wouldn't be like native 4K, it'd be upscaled from 1440, but with YouTube, if I upload to 4K, then I can have a much higher bitrate. It doesn't cap the bitrate nearly as low. So what that means, just basic terms, bitrate means that there'll be a lot more data per second, so I can have less compression in all of the frames in my video, so it'll look a lot clearer. So hopefully that's the end goal, but that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. I'm really hoping that I can step the quality of these videos up, because I feel like the editing has been progressing kind of over time, and especially going back and looking at like Rhinestone Island or even Fluxburg. Obviously that's a very old project, but I feel like the editing has been slowly progressing, but the quality of the videos has been about the same for the past maybe 2 or 3 years. So hopefully this is better. Let me know down below if you would like to see 4K. But aside from that, the other thing that I want to talk about is sort of the plans for the future of this project, because I kind of feel like the last few episodes have been pretty similar. I've been building a lot of like these residential buildings, residential districts, and I have to do this, right? Like this is kind of just a part of expanding the city. There's going to be a lot of kind of duplicate areas, and not duplicate in the sense that they look the same, but duplicate in the sense that I'm doing the same general thing. I'm making another residential complex. So I'm curious what you guys think about that, like how you feel about the last few episodes. I think that they've been varied enough to be still interesting, but I've been really eager to jump into the public transit, jump into the highway infrastructure stuff. I have like all these things in my head. Like I want to do a whole bunch of new highway networks, and I want to do a full episode with cinematics where we're going over the transportation network, because I can't do that in real time. I already talked about that like a few episodes ago. So, something like that will come very soon as well, probably after we do the highways and like really build out the infrastructure and start prepping for the expansion that's going to happen in maybe, 3 or 4 episodes or so. But just to give you an idea of when I want to start doing that, I know I've been like kind of teasing it and saying, oh yeah, we're going to do that super soon. I want to finish off the areas that I've already plotted out before I start expanding the city again. And that means doing this kind of stuff. So I think that we'll probably have like 1, maybe 2 more episodes where we're working in areas that we've already worked. So one in particular, and hopefully this translates well without actually being able to see it on the screen, but the very first interchange that we built, that big like kind of spread out interchange, it's still sitting over an empty plot of land. So I want to fill that with office space and some residential. And then also the areas immediately outside of what we're building right now, there's like a kind of park that was halfway done that I want to finish up as well. So those 2 are like priority number 1. So hopefully we can do that in the next episode or 2. And I want to try and keep them interesting, because I know that it's been sort of some repetition in like the content. So I'll try my best to make those like really fun episodes. I want to do some really cool stuff with those areas. But then from there, I'm really excited about expanding out our infrastructure. So yeah, I think I'm going to try and play around with some stuff, maybe edit the videos a little bit differently and provide some more like cinematic shots inside the episodes to make it easier to follow what's going on instead of just constant time lapse stuff like that. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head of ways that we can improve the videos, but not to make this entire video like a a feedback video where I want to hear what you guys are thinking, but I'm really curious what you guys think so far of the project, because we're getting to that point now. We're 17 episodes in. Been doing this for a while. I mean, I don't know when we started this. I guess it was probably like February or March or something, or maybe a little later than that. So, it's been a few months for sure. And I think that it's a good time to kind of reflect on it and see what you guys are thinking. And I've been really, really happy with the fact that it seems like a lot of you guys are pretty engaged still, even though we're 17 episodes in. So that makes me like really excited to keep working on this project. But I always want to be improving on the videos as we go. So if you have any suggestions, let me know down below, maybe like, you know, different formatting stuff. But I think that so far we've found kind of a nice formula so far. So I'm going to keep rolling with this for now, you know, change a few things around here and there, and that'll be that. But anyway, enough of the, you know, meta stuff. I don't really like to talk about that very much on my channel. Usually I just like to stick with the content. So back to the video. You might notice now that we have done already a bulk of the work, or almost all of the work actually. I'm just kind of going in now and lighting up these little inner areas. But like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we've got all of these big high-rise residential buildings, and they kind of create this little community in the middle. And I tried to use a bunch of stuff from Park Life. I used some of those food trucks and other, you know, little things, these little benches here, and some other niceties that sort of make this whole area feel like a nice community. So hopefully that kind of came across. But I think that this is kind of a nice formula to follow for some future residential areas. That'll be kind of key, and this is why I'm spending so much time on some of these, you know, aside from the fact that I actually have to fill out some of these blocks with more residential to kind of build the population. But I want to start finding the design style that I want to use and kind of replicate a little bit, because what I'm hoping will happen as we, like, after all that infrastructure episode stuff happens, after the public transit episodes happen, I want to start really rapidly expanding out and then focusing more on, you know, making the city functional, because it already is functional, but, you know, functionality of the city, infrastructure design, and less on just like placing individual props everywhere, because of course we can't follow like this hyper detail kind of stuff everywhere, or we would run out of props very, very quickly. So there's going to be some episodes where we expand out, we have some filled areas that are very much so, you know, lighter on props, but ideally still detailed. So if we can find, you know, a look that looks nice, and I can figure out, you know, what you know, formula looks good for these residential areas, then I can start building buildings in the asset editor that include all of these little details that we've done. And I think that this sort of format is my favorite so far for this little residential area we just built. But something like that, I'll build out a couple buildings in the asset editor that follow this sort of style, and then we can, you know, plop and mix and match, and it'll be a bit more of like a macro scale of construction rather than all of this, you know, redoing of detail over and over again. And hopefully that will make for, you know, a much more expansive city quicker. But with all that said, we are at the end of the episode now, so leave your feedback down below about anything we talked about today. I'd love to hear it. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.